I never told my son Marcus about my $40,000 monthly salary. He always assumed I lived a simple, ordinary life. To him, I was just Mom, the woman who left early in the morning, came home tired at night, cooked whatever was in the fridge, and quietly went about her day. I never corrected him. Why would I? Money was never something I needed to display like a trophy on the wall. I had earned it, yes, but I had also earned a quiet dignity that no one could take away. I grew up believing that silence carried more weight than words. That modesty, perseverance, and discretion were signs of true strength. I lived frugally, saved meticulously, and invested smartly. My leather handbag wore thin from years of use. My clothes came from discount stores. My apartment was modest, filled with furniture that was comfortable but unremarkable. Yet beneath that modesty, I had quietly built a life of wealth and independence. I had learned the value of working hard, of creating rather than inheriting, of understanding that true power doesn't shout. It observes. I was observing closely when Marcus called that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, hesitant, like a child caught in mischief. "Mom," he said, "I need to ask you a favor. Simone's parents are visiting from overseas. They want to meet you. We're having dinner at a restaurant on Saturday. Can you come?" Something in his tone immediately set off alarms in me. It wasn't the casual voice of a son inviting his mother to dinner. It was the voice of someone worried about judgment, worried about appearances. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly, keeping my voice steady. There was a pause. Then he stammered. I told them you work in an office, live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." The word simple sliced through me like a knife. It reduced my life, my struggles, my victories, my sacrifices, to a single dismissive adjective. And yet I did not flinch. I took a slow, deliberate breath. "Okay, Marcus, I'll be there," I said quietly. I hung up and glanced around my apartment. Everything here, old furniture, nothing fancy on the walls, a small TV, was exactly what my son imagined. And I decided then that I would give them exactly what they expected. A poor, naive, struggling mother. I wanted to see the truth in their eyes, to witness how they treated someone they assumed had nothing. Saturday arrived. I chose the worst outfit I owned. A shapeless, wrinkled gray dress from a thrift store, old shoes, no jewelry, no watch. I stuffed my belongings into a faded canvas tote, tied my hair back in a messy ponytail, and studied my reflection in the mirror. I looked forgettable, broken even. Perfect. The taxi pulled up outside the high-end restaurant in the city's most exclusive district, a place where menus didn't list prices, and each table setting could cost more than a month's rent for most people. Warm lights glimmered inside. A doorman in white gloves nodded to arriving guests. My stomach tightened with anticipation and a tinge of sadness. Anticipation because I knew a revelation was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped I was wrong, that perhaps they would treat me with kindness. That I stepped out of the taxi, took a deep breath, and crossed the threshold. There they were. Marcus, stiff and anxious in a dark suit. Simone, flawless in a tailored cream dress, eyes tense, avoiding me. And her parents, seated like royalty. Veronica, her mother, gleamed in an emerald green dress, sequins catching the light, adorned with jewelry on every visible wrist and finger. Franklin, her father, looked every bit the successful businessman. Gray suit impeccable. Watch enormous, expression unreadable. They exuded power, money, and judgment. I walked slowly toward them, tentative, fragile, as if every step revealed my poverty. Marcus's eyes widened, assessing me like a child caught sneaking candy. Simone's lips pressed into a polite but mechanical smile. And then the real judgment began. Veronica's gaze scanned my wrinkled dress, my worn shoes, my canvas tote. She extended her hand, cold and brief. Franklin did the same, equally calculated. I sat at the end of the table, the one furthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The menus arrived, French, extravagant, incomprehensible to me, and I feigned ignorance. Veronica leaned slightly forward. "Do you need help with the menu?" "Yes, please," I murmured. "I don't know what any of this says." Her lips curved in a practiced smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Something simple then. Something inexpensive. We don't want to overdo it." The phrase hung in the air, a deliberate jab. Simple. Inexpensive. as if my life were a series of compromises. I nodded, letting it pass. Dinner began. Veronica and Franklin recounted their journey from abroad. Luxurious hotels, exotic stores, expensive purchases, and investments. Money, money, money. And always in my direction an unspoken evaluation. "And what do you do, Alara?" Veronica asked finally, sweet but sharp. "I work in an office," I replied quietly. "A little of this, a little of that. Paperwork, filing, basic tasks." A glance exchanged between the parents. "Administrative work." "That's honest," Veronica said, as though rewarding me for my humility. The courses arrived, art on plates, each bite a fortune. Veronica cut her steak meticulously. $1.80, she said proudly. "But worth it. Quality matters." I nodded. Of course quality matters. The interrogation continued. Did I live alone? Could I manage financially? I responded politely, letting them misjudge. "Oh, Alara, you're so brave," Veronica said, almost theatrically. "We always admire women who struggle alone. Though naturally one always wishes to give their children a better life." The implication was clear. I had failed Marcus by not providing wealth and comfort. Simone averted her gaze. Marcus clenched his fists. I smiled inwardly, calm, quiet, ice beneath the surface. They spoke of their own generosity. $40,000 for a house down payment, $15,000 for a honeymoon, investments, travels, education for Simone. Then came the subtle bribe disguised as charity, a $500 to $700 monthly allowance to disappear, to be a comfortably supported shadow in my own son's life. Marcus nearly exploded. "Mom, that's enough." I raised a hand. Silence fell. All eyes on me. I sat, poised, and spoke calmly, but every word carried authority. "That's an interesting offer, Veronica. Truly generous. But I have a few questions." Her frown deepened. "Of course," she said cautiously. "How much exactly would you consider a modest allowance?" "Well, $700 perhaps." I nodded. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life. That is precisely how it sounds. Her smile faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her carefully composed face. Franklin tried to intervene, opening his mouth as if to defend her, but I ignored him. Marcus went pale, his jaw tight, as if he were both ashamed and scared. Simone, her fork hovering above her plate, avoided my gaze entirely. I allowed the silence to stretch, letting the weight of the moment settle like dust in the sun, and then I spoke. "You said you admire women who struggle alone." I began, my voice calm but sharp, slicing through the pretense. "Have you ever struggled alone, Veronica? Have you ever built something from nothing without your husband backing you? Have you ever raised a child without the safety net of family money?" Veronica stiffened, her lips pressing together as she searched for a reply. She stumbled through a list of accomplishments: managing investments, overseeing properties, running businesses. All things that, I realized, had been created from wealth she had inherited or married into. Everything she claimed to have built had been handed to her, brick by brick, on a foundation she hadn't laid herself. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locking onto hers. "There's a difference, Veronica," I said evenly, "between managing wealth someone else created and building it from scratch. Between inheriting an empire and creating one brick by brick. Don't you see?" She faltered, struggling for words. Franklin opened his mouth, annoyed, as if my words were a personal attack. Marcus looked stunned, unable to decide whether to look at me or away. Simone's expression flickered between shame and disbelief, and I felt a quiet, thrilling satisfaction. 40 years ago, I continued, I was 23, a secretary making minimum wage. Alone. Pregnant. No support. The father had disappeared. My family turned their backs on me. I had to decide whether to give up or keep going. I chose to keep going. I worked 12-hour days, came home to care for my son, studied at night, learned finance, accounting, English administration, all on my own. All while raising Marcus. I built my life brick by brick, without anyone handing me a safety net. I paused and let my words sink in. The air in the restaurant seemed heavier, charged with the gravity of truth. Veronica's carefully composed face faltered. Franklin's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Marcus looked at me with a mixture of pride and awe. Simone's fork clattered against her plate as she finally looked up, eyes wide. You've spent the evening talking about money, about purchases, about investments and donations, I said, voice steady, cold. But you've never asked how I am. If I'm happy. If I need support or companionship. You've reduced my entire life, my sacrifices, my struggles to a dollar amount. And apparently that's worth $700 a month. Veronica paled. She opened her mouth to speak but could not form the words. Franklin tried to interject, I think, but I held up my hand, silencing him. Let me finish, I said. My voice had grown stronger now, filled with a quiet authority. You came here tonight to measure me with your wealth, to judge me with your standards. And yet, I am the one who built everything from nothing. I am the one who earned my life. I am the one who knows the value of hard work, perseverance, and dignity. I leaned back slightly, my movements calm, deliberate. And Marcus, my son, your son, he knows nothing of what I've done. He only knows the version of me that you expected him to see. Frail, poor, struggling. But he will know the truth now. By the end of that evening, the world had shifted. Veronica and Franklin, who had arrived thinking they could measure my worth with their money and status, sat humbled and uncertain. Simone had learned that perfection and wealth do not equate to character, and Marcus, my Marcus, finally understood the full story of his mother. I had revealed the truth, that I had built my life from nothing, fought my battles alone, and raised him into the man he had become, all while living modestly, quietly, and with dignity. No amount of money could buy what I had earned through perseverance, intelligence, and sheer determination. As we left the restaurant, the night air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and city lights. Marcus walked beside me, his hand brushing against mine in a silent gesture of respect and love. Simone followed, unsure, humbled. Veronica and Franklin remained behind, lost in the realization that they had misjudged me completely, and I walked away knowing that true power, true success, and true wealth are not measured in dollars, appearances, or pretenses, but in resilience, wisdom, and integrity. Life had taught me long ago that silence can carry more weight than words, that humility does not equate to weakness, and that those who underestimate others often learn the hardest lessons. Tonight had been one of those lessons, and I had watched, observed, and finally revealed the truth in my own perfect timing. So, dear reader, that is my story. The story of a mother who never flaunted her success, who let appearances deceive the world, only to reveal her strength at the moment it mattered most. If you enjoyed this story, please let me know in the comments how you felt about it. I would love to hear from you. And don't forget to mention your country and city, so we can see where everyone is watching from.